Well, if you're not finishing your food, wasting it, or buying something just for the heck of keeping it in your refrigerator, then you are contributing to climate change. Now, you would be thinking, I always talk about how we contribute to climate change every time in a bad way. Now, that's the theme of the show, to understand what all we are doing on a daily basis that actually doesn't work so well for the climate. How does food come into the picture? Ultimately it comes from the environment. So how is food actually polluting the environment? How does it happen? What really goes into the value chain? And how can we solve the problem of food wastage, whether it happens at the consumer level or pre-consumer level as well? That is something that we'd like to understand today. How does food wastage contribute to carbon emissions? We have with us today Jaggi Nadig, who is the director at Wastelink company. Jaggi, thank you so much for joining us. And as I was saying, I always talk about things that people generally do that contributes to carbon emissions. So they must be wondering, how does food come into this picture? Can you explain that to us? How does this connection work? How do carbon emissions with food wastage are related?
Thank you, Sonal. Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here. So food, it contributes to carbon emissions in a very, very big way from the time the food is produced till it is processed. And, so it's not just processing, but then once you've processed it and used all the resources, when you bring it home and then you waste it, right? Or you waste it even before it comes home when things get expired or things get damaged. I think that is where we're contributing significantly to greenhouse gas emissions. So I would say in terms of food, it is the largest thing, India's single largest contributor to greenhouse gas emissions.
Food is one of the largest contributors, that is.
Yeah.
So say it would be wet food waste or dry food waste, both of them contribute equally if in terms of numbers we look at it?
I would say I don't have a breakdown of that, but I know they're both significantly contributing. Now, wet food waste has a big challenge in terms of they decompose very quickly. The amount of moisture in that food means the food decomposes quickly. So there is a big challenge in terms of aggregating it, transporting it, and then processing it. And that takes a lot of processing power as well. So wet food waste has a significantly bigger challenge, while dry food, we have a little bit more time, and therefore we can find more creative ways of solving that problem.
Okay, so where does Wastelink come into the picture? How did it start? If you can start with that story, and what do you really do here?
Yeah, so Wastelink is pretty interesting. I joined Wastelink much later. There's two founders, Krishnan and Saket. And both of them met at a tech company. And our CEO, Saket, loves climate, loves sustainability. He's that kind of champion. And after a while, realized that corporate was not the way. He wanted to make a difference. Exited that tech company and was exploring different ways of finding a business solution for sustainability, right? Given there's issues in oil, there's issues in clothing, there's issues in food. And I think then he chanced upon this idea of food, because food is something that we all relate to, we can see. And food is a problem that India has. Like I said, I think the biggest contributor to GHG. So we started with one company, with ITC. I think that's where Wastelink was born. We were solving the problem of food waste that is created either in the factories or during the supply chain, whether it's warehousing, whether it's distributors. And so that food had to be meaningfully upcycled. And until that point, it wasn't, right? The solution there was either to burn it or to bury it. So what Wastelink does essentially is work with all the top food producers today. We go wherever the food waste is across the country. We pick up the food waste. We bring it into our processing centers where we segregate the packaging and the food. And the food, there's a team of nutrition scientists who look at the food and essentially create various feed formulations. And then we sell it to the feed companies. We don't go to the farmers. So it's a pure B2B play.
Okay, very interesting. So, when you talk about picking it up from different locations, how big is your distribution network? Where all are your processing units? And since it's mostly dry waste and it's pre-consumer, can you give us some stats in terms of how much waste happens pre and post-consumer? What's the total amount of food waste that happens in India?
Yeah. It's a huge problem, right? The food waste today is about 200 million. Yeah. Out of that, 60% is pre, so which means that's 120 million. So just to give you some kind of pictorial of what that means, that's about 300,000 tons every single day. So if you go to the Wankhede Stadium, where obviously India just beat New Zealand to go to the semi-finals. So if you're in Wankhede, if you take 4 such Wankhedes and fill it up with food, that's the amount of food we waste on a daily basis.
Oh my God.
So it's a huge problem. So yeah, so we, sorry,
You basically, how do you collect that
Yeah,
much waste?
yeah. So the collection is we've got a wonderful partner of logistics providers. We go pan India, all the way from the border of Pakistan till Nepal, all the way down south. And we have got 4 processing centers today and a whole bunch of other hubs, about 13 hubs in the country. And the processing centers are in Bombay, they're in Bangalore, Delhi, which is Sonepat, and in Lucknow. So depending on where we pick it up from, it comes to our processing center, from where it gets upcycled.
Okay, so it's from the distributor or is it from the company directly? And how does that equation work overall?
Yeah, we work across, whether it's manufacturing, and then after manufacturing, once it goes into a warehouse, we go there as well. And of course to the distributor. We don't go down to the retail level. So from retail, it comes back to distributor, and we pick it up from the distributor levels.
Okay.
So some of the top brands, the Tatas, for example, have probably 1,500 distributors or more in the country. So we work with a lot of them, a lot of those distributors, and go wherever the food waste is and then pick it up and bring it back.
Okay, so does it not happen that distributors go back to the companies directly that, okay, this was the waste, take it back and you can only give it to somebody else? How does Wastelink come into the picture? Did you approach distributors that, come, I will do it for you, and you tell company, you also don't worry about it, we are there?
Yeah. So it was interesting because we did speak to a few distributors. We also spoke to the brands. Now, the brands need to drive this, right? Because it's their food, right? So we went to the brands. The problem statement there was, one, there was not as much visibility into the food, right? Once it's in the distributor. Second, the brands didn't understand. There was misinformation, miscommunication. There was mistrust between the brands and the distributors. I'm not saying all, but some of them, right, in terms of the total volumes of food waste that is produced on a monthly basis, because brands will pay back the distributor on things that are not sold or damaged, right? So now there could be some serious mistrust in that whole equation. So what we do is, we've told the brands that we'll go to the distributor, we will pick it up, right? There's an audit process that happens. We come right after that, and we pick up. If there's 100 kgs, we know that there's 100 kgs. It goes into our. So we've created a tech platform. Everything is visible from end to end, and both the brand, the distributor, the auditor, and us, we're all on the same page in terms of the total food we've picked up. And after that, it's just commercial between us and the companies.
Okay, so you basically earn in that process, or that's a cost to you? Is that your complete raw material there?
It is, well, it's interesting because we convert a cost center for the brands into a revenue, right? But so we pay the brands, and then we bring it into our center. So we think of it as a raw material for us. Whereas for the brands, it is an opportunity for them, obviously, to do the right thing, which is to upcycle the food while earning from it. So they've now converted a cost center to a revenue center.
Okay. Just to understand, is there a number to the carbon emission that there is, say 1 kg of food waste? How much carbon emission would it produce?
Again, it depends on the kind of food. So 1 kg approximately is between 1 to 2.5 kgs of GHG, that is greenhouse gas emissions, approximately.
And it's methane, so to say. It's not even carbon dioxide, which is even worse than carbon dioxide in that matter. So are you the only guys who are into this food processing or food waste processing segment? Is there a policy in place already? Is India lacking here?
Yeah, there's, okay, to answer the first question, we are the only ones doing this systematically, pan-India, and doing the right thing, because we want to do the right thing for the food. We do know of some players who will pick up the food and then misuse it, which could be as simple as just rebranding it, taking the food out of the packaging and rebranding it and putting it into tier 2, tier 3 cities. We do know of certain auctions that are in place for food waste, and some of the prices that get quoted are it's just impossible in animal feed, right? So we do know that. So we do work very closely with some of our brands in trying educating them on what can go wrong, right? And I think we've been very lucky in terms of some of the brands such as the ITCs of this world, Unilever, Tata Consumer Products, Britannia. We've got Mondelez, so both Indian and multinational companies who trust us, right? So some of the leaders, for us, we find great satisfaction when we meet some of these leaders in the company who take it upon themselves to say, hey, let's do the right thing. But otherwise, from a government point of view, there is yet a policy to come out on this matter, and we would love to work with the government on that.
Okay. So when we talk about nothing in India, is there a standard international benchmark, any other company which is doing it, and you think that model can be replicated in India as well? And something that should be the first priority right now when it comes to processing or at least identifying that food wastage is also a climate issue?
Yeah, no. I mean, in the West, there's plenty of innovators. There's a listed company in the US. It's called Darling Ingredients. They're huge. I think they're revenue of 300 million plus company. Then the policies there are being put in place, especially Europe. Their policy drives food producers. So we would love for some of that to get translated here in the Indian context, and we need to do it really bad, because I think there's two things. One is we don't have enough produce for animals. Right, so now animals today get the lowest quality of grain. So the corn and the soy is not human quality at all. It's the lowest quality. And secondly, there's not enough, right? So what the solution that we are proposing here is not just gives them human quality. There's a little bit of a flavor profile, right, which animals love. So it's very evident now. There's enough studies being done in the West which says a happier cow means more produce, better produce, more quality, right? So I think that's something to really look at. And like I said, I think from a policy point of view, we would love to see some policy being put in place, or where the entire food producers come together, right? And we kind of do what is right.
No, so, the stat that you mentioned was also quite interesting, because I always thought that it's the post-consumer wastage which is more, the way we've seen in the US or the other Western countries. But here it's more when it comes to pre-consumer. Yeah. So when you are saying that out of the 200 million tons that gets wasted, 120 is in pre-consumer, how much of that do you process? What is your capacity there?
See, we are a startup. A bunch of us, we were all in the world of corporate. My co-founder Krishnan is IIT Madras, Northwestern PhD, McKinsey, and then he was with a tech firm. Saket, who was the CEO, was also part of the tech firm. And so we've all said, look, let's come back and do what is right? So I think it's, call it a midlife crisis, call it a second innings. But that's essentially, we are very, very passionate about doing what is right for the environment. So I lost my train of thought.
No, that's okay. I was just asking you what is the capacity that you
have?
Yeah,
in terms of capacity, we've got, we're today at about 2,000 tons a month capacity-wise, and we're only getting bigger and bigger right now.
So is this, unlike any startup, I'm just talking from a business perspective, because it is a processing unit that you have set in place. What are some of the challenges that you have when you get this waste? Because even if it's dry in some form, by the time it comes to you, it does get ruined, right? So some of the challenges, the weirdest things that you've got for which you had to pay.
Yeah. No, there's, food is interesting. So because our promise to the brands is that nothing gets leaked, right? So transporting the food securely from the brand or the distributor to our factory is a huge priority for us. and we take that very, very seriously. So there's a lot of processes that we've put in place to ensure food integrity, right? In terms of we've also worked with certain brands where uh, like, let's say, cheese, right? And we kind of work with the brands to make sure that it comes to us before it starts decaying. But we've had sometimes some really, really decayed cheese that comes, and that can really smell up the factory, right? And kind of not good for the rest of the feed. So we've had to take out some of those brands. In terms of the weirdest thing, I think we've had distributors play games with us. I mean, it's because we do pay on kg. We've had sometimes some beautiful stones that have come our way. So, yeah.
Okay, that is greenwashing was also a big part of climate change conversations here, right? So, in that case, the output prices, the feed prices, do they keep changing? I'm just trying to understand the business model here. What is the market dynamic here? And does your take rate also change? Basically, the raw material price that you're considering, say you're paying to the brand, you're paying to the distributor as well. Does that also fluctuate?
Yeah, so two sides, right? One is on the supply side. For me, supply is are all the food producers. We lock in 1 year rates, so that is constant. And like I said, I think it's a for the brands, it's a cost that's now converted into revenue. So I think that works okay. Now, when it comes to the demand side of things, it's typically done use soy, corn, and that those prices fluctuate a lot. But with us, what happens is they get something which is locked in for a year, right? Higher quality ingredient and more flavor profile. So we work with some of the biggest ones, right? And they love what we give them. Right?
What are the companies, if you could name them?
Cargill, Cargill is one of them. That's very big for us.
Okay. So, I just want to understand that this is the pre-consumer segment that you're in. Post-consumer, even though the smaller of the two, is still a big amount, and that is basically what the final consumer is consuming, right? A lot of them don't understand that wasting food is just not something that should happen on a daily basis, barring some of the instances. Would companies want to get into that segment as well? Is that as easy as dry waste?
It's it's a huge problem because you and I can see this on a day-to-day basis, right? But something like what we do happens in the background in distributors, so it's not as visible. But post-consumer is a huge problem. It is well, like I said, it's 40% in India of 200. That's about 80 million right now. And there's the challenge there is the collection. The challenge there is the segregation of food, because you don't want to be touching vegetarian and non-vegetarian food, because they get processed differently. And then it's effectively transporting them, right? And then immediately processing them, right? So all of that is a big challenge. There are no significant policies. There are few companies doing this. You know, I see a lot of apartment associations coming together, which is really nice to see. But still a lot that can be done. It is you don't see big players in that right now because it's just the amount of work that's needed. That being said, I know a couple of companies now that take some of this wet food and use insect protein, you know, to upcycle it into protein. So that's it's a black soldier larva, I think it's called black soldier. And so some of those innovations we're starting to see, but I think it's still a long way away.
Okay. So, but still, people are thinking of making waste again in edible form, as you said, protein there, and what you are doing with dry waste converting into feed. So, what would the next idea for you be? 2,000 tons per month is what your capacity is. How much are you utilizing it? And are you seeing more demand coming from the same companies or newer companies coming to you, not only from the consumer segment, from other companies as well? Are you seeing that? Would you be looking at increasing capacity?
No, absolutely. And I think the way the brands work today is they will give us a little bit of the food waste, because a lot of people have used it. It's been misused earlier. So they give us a little bit, test us, and then they start opening up more and more. Right? So if I have to give you an example, a large factory from a large brand, right, would produce about 300 to 500 tons of food waste a month. Okay. Now, some of the big brands have about 80 such factories. So you can the numbers. I mean, I'm at less than 1% penetration right now.
Yeah, that's around 24,000 tons a month.
Month, yeah.
I'm
Just
going by the
just
lower numbers.
One
Yeah.
brand.
One brand.
That's one
yeah.
brand, right? So the problem statement is very large, right? So that's just factory, and then there is processing. There is the whole supply chain related waste as well. So we are growing. So brands now are now saying, hey, you've done south, now let's go to west. Now you've done west, now let's go to the east. Let's go to north. So we do it very programmatically. Because remember, in this business, it's a lot of touch and feel. I can't scale like a tech business, right? It's a lot of touch and feel. It's a lot of human interaction. So it does require a lot of discipline. It does require a lot of bringing people on board. So those are some challenges that we have to overcome. But in terms of, I think what's out there in the market, I mean, it's huge opportunity that's lying.
So, what would you think, like, as a person who's just watching us today, they would be wondering that, okay, what do I do with the food that I'm wasting? Do you think the first step they should be doing is, boss, just go segregate it first up? That's your thing. But from a policy perspective, is there something that you have in your mind that the government should do immediately that should just happen, maybe, for this big problem?
Yeah, as consumers, I think we should become more smarter about our food, what we order, what we eat, and in terms of, how much we eat, because we do tend to overorder and we end up wasting, right? So order only that much that you'll consume. Now, at our level, right, at a pre-consumer level, I would love for us to sit and have this conversation with all the food producers and the ministry in terms of saying, how do we ensure the food waste has full traceability, right? We want to make sure that the food waste, one, doesn't get burnt, doesn't get buried, right? Or third, doesn't get misused, right? So how do we ensure that there is full traceability in making sure that the food brands understand that this food produced, went here, and then we can actually say that this was used for animal feed. So we have to show that full circle and prevent some of the leaks that are happening in the system today.
So we need a strong policy decision here, the way we've seen in the West countries as well. So if you are in, say, Bangalore right now, you said Mumbai is a processing unit, there's Sonipat. So how many touch points do you cover here? Because there are 4 different places, but India is huge,
India
and
is huge, yeah.
we have food as one of the biggest sources of income, and it is one of the biggest contributors to GDP as well.
It is, and it's the fastest growing segment as well. Consumer packaged food is growing very, very rapidly. A lot of innovation happening in that food as well. See, for us, because we are pan-India, right, and today we work with close to about 4,000, 5,000 distributors through the country, right? And then there is warehouses and there's manufacturing plants. So the scale at which we operate is significantly high. And then so what we've now gone ahead with is creating hubs in various cities. Earlier, if I had to pick up in Tamil Nadu, I pick it up and bring it right away to Bangalore. But now we've created hubs. So a lot of them go to the hubs, they aggregate up. So that our carbon footprint also reduces, right? So we make sure we fill a truck and then we bring it into our factory. So like I said, the challenges is and the touch points are very, very large.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. So it comes with the packaging then you have to segregate packaging and the food. Then that is another step that you have to take.
Yeah. No, so brands today trust us with the packaging as well. So the packaging that comes in, we've now built our own machines where it goes on a conveyor, gets segregated between the food and the non-food. And the packaging, we work with a lot of the PCB certified vendors who will upcycle that separately.
Okay.
Food is something that we
focus on
retain.
food.
Yeah.
And it would be different for meat and non-meat products. I'm asking if there's frozen meat that comes your way as well.
We don't touch frozen yet. Not yet.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
The challenges of, I think, transportation, saving, processing, I think it's challenging. I think once we become large enough, and I think then we'll look at it. I think, but it's there in our evolution, right? To go into post-consumer, to go into meat processing. But I think that's some ways away.
But just generally to understand, meat waste, would that have more emissions than non-meat waste, or
Absolutely.
it is more, right?
Yeah.
And that's one of the issues that the industry keeps talking about as well. Go vegan, go do this, do
Yeah,
that,
yeah.
because it is contributing to climate change. So 200 million tons is what India produces in terms of food waste, or not produces, wastes food. That is, and 60% of that is pre-consumer itself. So
Yeah.
what people are wasting is still smaller part, but it's still so huge in absolute terms,
Absolutely.
right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
It's really an eye-opener, Jaggi. Thank you so much for joining us. And I read somewhere that if food wastage was a country, it would be the third largest emitter after US and China. So
Absolutely.
that's such a big number in terms of food wastage, because we don't think of it as a contributor to the problem of climate change, but now we should ideally.
Yeah.
So thank you so much for joining us, and thank you for doing what you do. I hope it becomes bigger, and there is a policy in place as well for the problem of food waste that is there pre and post consumption as well, right?
Thank you. Thank you so. Thank you for having me. Thank you for allowing us this platform to amplify what we do. I think it's an important initiative, and I hope all of us come together in solving this problem.
Oh, yes, absolutely. Thank you so much for joining us. And thanks to our viewers for tuning into this podcast and taking conscious steps and making conscious choices every day.